Hi, my name is Brad Gilley and welcome once again to my shop. For today's project, we're going to make a really nice work surface for an adjustable height desk. Now we already have the desk base and it's pretty awesome the way this thing goes up and down. To make the work surface, all we're going to use are three simple materials. I have a 4x8 sheet of white birch plywood. I have a 1x2 stick of poplar that we're going to use to trim around the edge of the plywood. And I have a 2x4 sheet of this pegboard right here that we're going to use to make a hidden cable management system underneath. This one's going to be awesome, so let's get started. The first thing that I'm going to do for this project is take my 1x2 of poplar and I'm actually going to rip it right down the middle on my table saw. The reason why I'm starting with this is because this work surface, this desk, is for my son and he wants the outside border to be red. I'm going to stain this red and I want to do that first and give it time to dry before I actually glue it to the outside border of the work surface itself. To rip it in half, I'm going to use my table saw. Now it's time to apply the stain to the border. To do that, I'm just simply going to rub it on with a rag. I'm only going to stain the three sides that will be on the outside. I'm not going to stain the side that's actually going to be mated up against the plywood because, again, I want to eliminate any bleeding over of the stain to the plywood. I want to let you know that I actually had to go back and restain each and every one of those border pieces because I forgot to sand them down before I stained them the first time. So I got to do it twice. My mistake. I'll learn from that. Hopefully you can too. I'm ready to cut this 4x8 sheet of plywood down to the desktop size now. When we cut plywood, there's a very special way to do this. This is actually a really nice desktop. My son and I actually pulled through about 10 of these at the home center to find the exact one that we wanted. What we don't want to do is have any chip out when we cut it. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to lay this plywood down on my table here, good side up, measure off what we're going to cut, and then lay the painter's tape over the cut lines. Now when you lay the painter's tape over the cut lines, you do need to press it down nice and tight. What that's going to do again is help prevent the chip out. Once we get that laid out, I'm going to actually flip it over good side down and measure again and lay more tape down. When you're cutting a big sheet of plywood, it's very important that you don't have any major pieces hanging off the edge, meaning that when you cut through the plywood, that piece is going to drop off. That's a guarantee that you're going to have chip out. My workbench is almost a 4x8 size. It's a little bit shorter than that, but it's going to be okay for what we're doing. Now you can see I laid down a couple of sheets of MDF. The MDF is actually going to be directly under my cut line. This means that the good side of my plywood tabletop is going to be resting right on top of this MDF. So that way, as the saw blade is cutting through, there's not going to be any of the plywood veneer just kind of hanging out in the air, which could lend itself to chip out. On my circular saw here, I actually went to the home center and got this plywood blade. Now normally, I just have a regular contractor's blade on here and that's fine for rough cutting anything else. But this is a nice piece of plywood. It's going to be part of the desktop. You want something with a lot of teeth on it. This is a 60 tooth blade. They had blades all the way up to 140 teeth, but what I liked about this one is it also had the carbide tip. Before we cut into the plywood, I need to properly set the height of the blade on my circular saw. Right now you can see it right next to the edge and how deep this cut would be. We don't want it to be that deep. Number one, this would likely cause chip out. Number two, I don't want to cut into the surface of my workbench. So what I need to do is raise the blade height to where it is sitting just about maybe 1/4 of an inch below the surface of the plywood on the bottom. And I think that right there is going to be a good height. I'm going to use this guide clamp to guide my saw through the cut, but what I need to do is make sure I set the clamp exactly in the right spot. To figure out where that spot is, I'm just going to measure from the edge of my saw to the inside of my blade, and that looks like it is just under 1 3/4 inches, about 1 5/8 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and remeasure this all the way to 1 5/8 inches past where I already have it to make sure I get the right distance on both sides. All right, there we go. Look how nice and smooth that cut came out right there. We're gonna let this sit here tonight. We're gonna let our border dry. Tomorrow we're gonna come back, put everything together. I'm back in the shop. I have my work surface cut. I have my desk base here. What I need to do next is get everything ready to mount the work surface to the desk base. When it's complete, the work surface is going to be 55 inches wide by 28 inches deep. The great thing about this desk base is, including it being an adjustable height desk, it also has an adjustable width. Right now, I have that width set to 46.5 inches. That's going to give me 8.5 extra inches to play with, which will be 4.25 inches on either side. The depth of it, that's fixed. You can't adjust that. And this is at 22.5 inches, which means I'm going to have 5.5 inches, 2 3/4 inches of overhang on either side, and I'm perfect with that. But what I'm not good with is just mounting the work surface directly to this desk base. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the extra plywood cut off and I'm going to build some runners to go underneath it. Those runners will, number one, give me a little extra thickness to screw into from underneath, but number two, it's also going to add more support to the work surface as well. I'm going to have runners for either side, and I'm going to have runners that are going to go across the width of the desk as well, and I'm going to cut a couple more runners that are going to be part of the hidden under desk cable management system. Now that I have all my pieces ripped, I can come over to the miter saw and cut everything to length. You can see right here, let me try and get this a little closer. I marked where the holes on the desk itself are that I'm going to drill into, because I'm actually going to put holes in this to mount it to the underside of the work surface, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't actually hit the exact same spot where the holes in the desk are going to be. First thing I'm going to do is drill some pilot holes before I actually screw it in. I'm also going to tape off my drill bit to make sure I don't go too deep. In addition to screwing this down, I'm going to glue it as well, because I don't want there to be any gaps. I don't want there to be any reason for this to be creaking around while my son's using it. These last two pieces I'm putting on here are actually for the hidden cable management system. I'm going to go ahead and glue and screw those as well. Time now for me to cut the pegboard. I had already measured this when I did my initial measurements for the bottom of the work surface, so I'm going to cut this to size and then show you exactly how this hidden cable management system is going to work. Now, if you go and look at the back of my desk, for example, all you see behind it are cords and cables and everything hanging down from the back. It's all in an intertwined web of a mess. This pegboard is going to help clean that up. So what my son can do, he can take all of his cords, all of his cables, all of his power bricks, coil them up nicely, and then zip tie it to the back of this pegboard. To make it easier to do, what I'm going to do is actually take these hinges right here and hinge the back of it so you could stand it up like this, or actually let it drop down like this. Do all the work that you need to do, tuck it right back up underneath, and I'm going to attach it with screws. One thing I just realized, these little screws right here are just going to go right through the pegboard. So I think I'm going to take some of the offcuts from this and actually do another bar underneath it to make sure everything is supported properly. All right. Look at that. Time to mount it to the tabletop now. Uh-oh. I just screwed up big time. Check this out. I built an offset right here into my work surface to compensate for that motor, but I built it offset this way, and I should have built it offset this way. I guess I get to take it apart. Look at this. Everything lined up perfectly underneath. This is awesome. So the next thing I need to do is, on the runners themselves, there are 4 of these holes, and what I need to do right now is drill pilots for those holes so I can get everything screwed in. I want to show you how the under desk hidden cable management system works. Now, I've already unscrewed the pegboard that we put on earlier. All you simply have to do is swing it down. Let's say I need to have this data cable in there. You take a simple zip tie or two, zip tie it in, and you're good to go. Check that out. It's all hidden underneath here. I'm ready to attach the border to the edge of the desk, and this is not going to be just a simple clamp it and glue it, or glue it and use some brad nails. The reason for that is because I already pre-stained these border pieces. What I have to worry about now is managing the glue squeeze out when I attach this. If I just attach this the normal way, I'm going to have a nice bead of glue squeeze out that I have to do something with. If I try and wipe it off when it's wet, then it's going to get glue inside of all of these fibers. This is going to have a natural finish on top. This is already stained. If I get glue inside of those fibers, it's not going to look good when I put the clear finish on there. If I try and go back later and scrape off the glue squeeze out, well then I worry about ruining this finish. Or if I even go back and try and sand it down, then I worry about, well, I will definitely ruin this finish here, but I will also potentially sand through the veneer on this plywood, two things that I don't want to do. So what I'm going to use here is some blue painter's tape to manage the glue squeeze out. Here are a couple of ways that this works. Number one, you can just clamp the two pieces together and run a piece of blue painter's tape right along the edge of this. Then take a fresh razor knife, and then what you would actually do is run it along the seam and split that to where it is right along the edge of it. You can see that, how nice it is. That actually came out pretty good. I don't have clamps big enough to go across this entire desk, so instead of worrying about clamping it down, I'm just simply going to take some blue painter's tape, make sure you get it nice and secure right along that edge, and again, I'm going to take my knife and just go ahead and cut it right along that edge. So I get the same effect here where the blue painter's tape is covering everything. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the edge of my board here. I'm just going to run it right along the side and make sure I trim it directly to the edge. I don't want to have any overhang. I don't want to miss any of it. So that way when I go to clamp these, any glue squeeze out that comes out of the top is going to rest alongside the top of the tape and not get into the fibers of my wood here, and I won't have to worry about actually marring my finish trying to get it off. Everything is glued up. I think this is going to come out just like I want it. Now, I'm not going to let this glue dry all the way. I'm actually going to come back when the glue hardens just a little bit, peel my tape and make sure I get all of it out. It's much easier to clean it up when the glue is not completely wet, but also not dry and hard as a rock. Boy, look at that. That is a nice seam right there. I'm pretty happy with the result. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. The hidden cable management system underneath is awesome. In fact, that was one of my son's suggestions. The red border came out way better than I expected. And in my next video, we're going to put a nice, smooth, clear polyurethane finish across the top of this. We'll show you the right way how to do that. For a complete list of all the tools and all the materials, including the adjustable height desk base, be sure and check out the description below. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you've got a comment, a suggestion, or something to say, leave that in the comments section. And as always, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I've got new videos coming out every single week. Thank you so much for tuning in to this project.